I've been asked that question. Who's the trusted advisor? Well, it's really simple. It's who you designate. It's the person you go to. In different circumstances, it might be a different person. So you have to look for someone who is a generalist, someone who knows all the areas, and they might have specific specialties, but they can manage the task. My partner and I, what we call ourselves, are problem solvers. Someone comes to us with a problem, a tax problem, a structuring problem, and what we focus on, okay, how do we best mitigate that problem? Because we might be able to get rid of it, or we might be able to lessen it. And then what we do is after we've come up with a solution, now we've got to find out who might need to assist us. So we've got to go to the accountant. We've got to go to a lawyer to paper it. Maybe we have to go and bring in a third-party buyer, or maybe we have to bring in a business evaluator. And in essence, that's your go-to person. That's the person who understands how all these parts move together. Unfortunately, there's very few people who actually do that in our society, because most people aren't generalists, they're specialists. And the way to become a generalist is you most likely have been a specialist in an area, and in essence, because of the complexity, you've had to learn about other areas as well. But that person also knows, it has to know, their weaknesses as well, and have strategic relationships with other professionals who can help the business owner. So the business owner said, I say you need a business evaluator because this is why we need it, because we've got to know what your business is worth. So then we can, after we figure that out, then we can go to a strategic buyer or a third-party fund to purchase your business. Well, then the business owner says, well, that's great. We need to get a business evaluator. I don't know one. Do you know a good one? Well, if I haven't actually worked with one, then it's just theory. It's the great idea. You want to find someone who has those strategic relationships. People want great service. They go to a restaurant because they want everything taken care of for them, and they want to make sure that there's quality. And this is something that someone has to do. And remember, when you're dealing with a trusted advisor, you're buying someone who's focusing up here. They have the ability to deal with complexity and plan 5-10 years in advance. And you have to ask those questions to them and find out if that is the person for you, because you have to look at whether they're, first, if they're competent, number two, are they committed to excellence, and third, are they care about you? Because what good is if someone's competent and they don't give, they don't think about you, it's all about the money. You don't want that either, because you're at the point where you're starting to value relationships. That's why you want out, right? I want to spend time at the cottage and whatever. And in essence, you want to sit down and reflect, but you need someone who's competent, and then someone who's going to look out after your interests and has those relationships to help you, who's going to manage everything. And you have to actually identify what you want to accomplish. That's the first place to go. It's like, I want to sell my business in the next 5 years. You have to actually make that decision. You just don't show up and just hope that these professionals are going to make your decisions. The reason why you're successful business people is because you made decisions. This is why you built something. So you have to make the decision what you want to accomplish. Then you look for someone who's competent, who can help you accomplish that. And that's the key. So if you decide in the next 5 years, I want to sell my business, what do I need to do to prepare my business for sale? And then you look for that professional who's competent in that area. But at the same time, you have to make sure that they can work with you. And you got to also be very familiar with a joke, which actually is reality. What do you call a medical student who finishes second last in his class? Doctor. You have to really look into this person, because this is the biggest decision for most business owners. The thing that got me to being able to make all these choices, I'm going to screw up my biggest decision, which is my most important, which is my last business decision, and that is getting out of my business. So you have to work with the right people. Well, we're all different, so it's never going to run the same way as we ran it. Many times the business reflects the business owner's personality. But to keep key employees, part of getting your business ready to sell is if you've never offered really good benefits to your employees, like bonuses, stock options, phantom stock plans, retirement compensation arrangements, all these real great perks. If it's very key that these people are part of the transition and that's going to allow you to sell the business, it's very important to start implementing those types of benefit plans for those people so they don't leave. I'm being called in many times now where it's a competitive environment. If you've got key people, it is so important to keep them. They're now starting to extend retirement ages at many of the law firms and accounting firms and all these places where you have people with specialized skills, because you've got the baby boomers who are such a huge population. They're close to 7 million people. Then you got Generation X. Generation X happens to be a third smaller in population. So if you're going to go and find those people and you work with them and you nurture them, you better do something that they stay with you and they're going to stay with the new owner, because guess what's going to happen? If they're not there, you're going to get less of a price for your business. And that's something that many people have to consider, because these people are asking, what's the growth? And the way that you sell to those people, when you sell the business to a third party, is growth. Because one of the biggest problems that a business has with key employees is they want to grow. So if I've got a company that's selling $30 million a year and it's sort of topped out, but if it's bought out by a company that has $1 billion worth of sales, there's lots of opportunity for these people that didn't exist before. So you can sell this as a good thing, a growth, because human beings want to grow. And it doesn't matter how great the opportunities are to making money. If I don't have growth, many people in many surveys have left jobs for lower paying jobs because the growth and the satisfaction of the work was there at the new opportunity that paid less. So you've got to create this for them and get them to buy into this. But it's very tricky when you sell to a third party, because in essence you also have to deal with secrecy. Because what happens if it doesn't work, or what happens if people get scared and they jump? And this is why you have to deal with people who can help you transition through that change. Well, again, the key is a business owner has to ask themselves, before they provide any benefit plan for their key people, is what do I want to accomplish? And what am I comfortable in offering? And that is key, because each benefit plan that I can offer people has certain benefits and certain detriments and features. So you have to sit down with an expert and figure this out. And I'll give you an example. I might start offering a group RRSP. The benefit is I'm helping my employees retire by putting money aside. The detriment for the business owner is as soon as I put money into that account, it belongs to the employees so they can leave. And in essence, the money's theirs. It's gifted to them almost immediately. I give it to them. But if I create something like an employee profit sharing plan, I can put certain restrictions on how they get the money. The problem with that one is, let's say I'm a private business owner, I might not want to show my financials because it's all based on profit. It's to sit down with an expert to help you weigh the pros and cons, but the most important thing is to figure out what your objective is and then work backwards. It's so much easier in project management. Back in the Second World War, they used to get to a river and they would say, we need a bridge that's going to carry 5,000 people and supplies, soldiers, a day across. And then they would work backwards. And that's the key. You need to identify objective, and once you identify your objective, then you can look at all these different options. And there's so many options out there. It's like, it is just incredible. And how you use it will be unique for your firm. But the key is you have to know what you're trying to accomplish first before you start offering it. And too often, I've walked into situations where people say, well, I should have this and I should have that because everyone else is having it. But you want to know something? It's not working for everyone else, and you don't know that because you never figured it, you never asked that question either. What do I want to accomplish by offering this type of plan? For example, there's something called a retirement compensation arrangement where you could pay into it it's similar to a pension plan, but it allows you great flexibility, and you can actually create a retirement compensation arrangement and you can even put millions of dollars in it. And you could put certain restrictions that this money is being set aside, so if the person buys the company or does whatever, they will be able to access this money. And you can put restrictions on it. And that's really the key. You're coming to an arrangement, you do not want to lose control. I've had situations where someone has, created family trusts for their kids, and their kids end up marrying and get divorced, and then now they're partners with their child's spouse. The key is whatever you decide, whether it's a retirement compensation arrangement, whether it's an employee profit sharing plan or a stock purchase plan, you have to sit down and look at what the pros and the cons of each one are. And the question you have to ask is, what can I live with? And that's really the key, because there's things that are good about each, and there's things that are not so good. And the question is, what best suits you and your objective? And the key, again, is sitting with an expert. And the first place that many business owners should go after listening to this presentation is go back to their experts, go back to their credit union, go back to their lawyers, go back to their accountants, and say, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that I want to get out, and I have some key employees that I'd like to transition. What are the options? Or I'd like to prepare my business to go to my son. What are my options? Or no one's interested in my business, or my business is just, it's not a business that can be handed to the employees. It's got to go to someone else because I want it to go to the next level. What can I do? And start looking for ideas. But in essence, it starts with the inkling that I could see life beyond my business to something else. But it starts with asking the question and then going back to the people you're already working with and figuring out if they can help you get to the next level. Well, as I shared with you in one of the first slides about our system is really great if you're going to create employment and have a business. Well, the government's got some really smart people working for them, Richard, which prepare and plan and are banking on that you haven't done proper planning. Because if you just sell your business, and there's two ways you can sell your business. One traditional way is I do a share sale. And I sell all the shares of my business to another party. A lot of people don't want a share sale. You know why? Because if I buy your shares and I own the company, whatever crazy things you did, I'm now liable for them. So if you did some crazy, sophisticated tax planning and the Revenue Canada has a problem and I sell the shares to someone else, they're responsible for that planning. The second option is an asset sale. I don't sell the company, I sell the assets. So I retain the corporation, but you get all the clients, you get everything in the assets. So let's talk about the tax consequences of both of them. If I just sell the shares, well, if it's a Canadian-controlled corporation, the first $750,000 is not taxable. And anything above that is going to be taxed at approximately 23%. Because it's treated as a capital gain. If I sell it as an asset sale, it becomes income. And I'm going to be taxed at whatever the marginal rate is. And the marginal rate, depending on the province, can range anywhere from 38% to, in Quebec, it could range to over 50%. So if you don't do planning, and it doesn't really, years ago I was told it doesn't really matter what you make, it's what you keep. So I can give you $2, but if you only keep 30 cents, and I give someone $1, but they keep 90, the person who was able to keep 90 is in a better position. So if you put in the proper structures within your corporation, like maybe a family trust, or whether a corporately owned insurance policy, or whatever structure you put in place, you could drastically reduce the tax legally because in essence it's got to be legal. You drastically reduce the tax so you end up with more money. And that's sitting down with the right people, because there's very few people who are skilled, unfortunately, in this country who can help you make the transition, because our country, until recently, was a very young country, so everyone was focused, and all the professionals were focused on helping you build, not transition. The reason I got into this business is because I was a university prof, and all my smart students wanted to become chartered accountants, or they wanted to become chartered financial advisors. And I started like reading and reading, and I'm saying, well, that's crazy. The herd's going this way. And that was probably great in the 70s when everything was building. But this is what the demographics are. Anybody who was reading David Foote and the boom, the bust, and the echo could see this is what's going to happen to the population, and we do not have the skill set. And unfortunately, one of the things that should be concerned, why you have to evaluate your professionals, is a generation that's following you is a third smaller. So those are the types of people you also have to look for, because you want someone who's old enough so you know that they're competent, but young enough to be able to tuck you in and turn off the lights. Whatever you put in implement, you want to make sure that they're around, that when you implement these things, they're going to be after you. And let me give you an analogy. I met tons of people in my life who've made their parents the guardians of their children. That doesn't make sense. The parents are older than they are. So you have to actually, when you're making these decisions, and they're major decisions, you have to look at all these characteristics. And the responsibility for these decisions rests on the business owner. And business owners are successful because they make good decisions. Maybe not the best always, but in essence they're successful because they made decisions while other people were hoping that someone would make decisions for them. So the transition and bring that skill set to your exit. You really can't sell a trust. A trust, in essence, what a trust is, it's really not a legal entity. It's assets put into it. So it's owned by somebody. And one of the situations that I find myself dealing with trust is a lot of people have structured things for tax purposes. However, they're not able to sell their entities, because what might work for tax purposes the optics aren't really great for someone to want to purchase it. This is why whatever you've done, it's important to sit back with your advisors and say, this is now what I want to achieve. Back then it was minimization of tax. Now it's getting my business to a position where someone else can take it over and want to buy it. Which the tax planning is completely different for that when you were trying to grow the business to when you're trying to sell the business. So it's a key to actually sit down and revisit. If you've set up a trust, you set up various corporations, it might be time to revisit it and to change that structure. And that's why it's important to ask that important question. What do I want to accomplish in this transition and in my succession planning? It's who you identify. For example, there's accountants who are very proactive, who are very innovative, who understand this, but there's a lot who don't. The CICA, the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants, in 2005 did a survey with their membership. There's 65,000 chartered accountants. There's 3 designations in Canada, but the chartered accountant most people recognize as being the highest level of accounting. And they asked, how many of you see yourself dealing with succession planning in the future? 15% said they were. They said, so how many are you dealing with it today? Only 3% said they deal with it today. But when they dug really deep, none of them were dealing with it, or very few were dealing with it. So this is why it's really important for you to now ask yourself what you want to accomplish, and then when you sit down with these people, find out and ask the right questions if these are the people who are going to help you get to the next stage. And that's why I'm recommending whoever you're dealing with, if it happens to be your bank rep, or your credit union rep, or your accountant or your financial advisor, it might be someone who you never really thought could help you, who can now help you. But it starts with knowing what you want. That's half the battle. You will win the battle by knowing what your objective is. And then you're able to go and find out who are going to be your allies in accomplishing this and to join you to get to that stage. We've been talking about prepping your business. Several things I'm going to look for. I'm going to want to, first of all, understand your structure. I'm going to have to be able to read your balance sheets and be able to verify everything you're saying about your business is actually true. Someone might say, my business earns several $1 million a year, and I look at the books and it only shows that it's making $30,000. So in essence, everything needs to be verifiable. Number two, I need processes in place. That means if I buy a business and I buy it from a business owner, I want to be able to run it the next day. This is why people like buying franchises, because all the processes and everything are in order. So if I actually buy a franchise, someone else has figured it out. I just take over and I'm able to run it. The same thing with the business. You have to treat it the same way. That I'm looking at, is there a second tier of management? Are there key employees? Once the business owner leaves, will these people be able to run the business? Does this business have profitability? Or a lot of strategic buyers will buy the business because, let's say I make doors and this company makes windows, and to be able to offer the two offerings actually helps my business. It could be like I'm buying a mustard factory because I have a ketchup factory, and now my reps can now sell both. You know, so basically what a person's going to look for is they're going to be can this business run, and does it have potential for growth? Because no one wants to buy a company at top dollar and tomorrow it's earning half. And buyers are getting very sophisticated in being able to buy companies. Remember the dot-com era? People were buying companies that had a business plan on a napkin. Those days are over. They're looking for companies that have potential for growth. And there's a lot of people out there who are looking for cheap opportunity. And you have to keep in mind, getting back to that $1.3 trillion, that there's going to be a lot of businesses up for sale. There's going to be more sellers than buyers if you have a really good business. So they're going to be looking for these things. They're going to be looking at structure, variability, and they're also going to be looking for key management and opportunity for growth. And this is why it's important to bring in other professionals, because maybe your skill set was to be able to grow it, to grow the business. But maybe to build that type of structure for the sale of the business, that might not be your skill set. That's why it's important to be able to find those key advisors, that maybe advisors you've never dealt with before. You know, and the first place to start is to ask questions of the people you already know who are advising you on your business.